skills in tracking, never has he found absolutely no trace like this.
It's been searched, he's not there.
And he believes the conspiracy theories are just that.
It's not going to happen. A wedge-tail will pick up a kilo or two. They're not going to pick up a 4-year-old. There's no pigs, there's no wild dogs, there's no foxes.
But if he's not somewhere out here on the property, where is Gus? Every piece of information in relation to this very high-profile missing persons case will now be examined and re-examined by police. Major Crime Police returning to the property on Friday night, speaking to a family member about his last known movements. Hope remaining he will somehow be found somewhere.
Our hearts are aching and we are holding on to hope that he will be found and returned.
I can't imagine what they're feeling, but uncertainty is always the worst, isn't it? They don't know where he is, how he is, if they'll ever find him, and that has got to be the absolute worst thing that could happen to anyone.
It's not going to happen. A wedge-tail will pick up a kilo or two. They're not going to pick up a 4-year-old. There's no pigs, there's no wild dogs, there's no fox.
Afternoon on September 27, 2025, at Oak Park Station near Yunta in South Australia's harsh outback, 4-year-old Gus Lamont vanished while playing on a sand mound outside his family's sheep farm. Fast forward to today, October 23, nearly a month later, and the case remains at a standstill, searches covering over 500 square kilometers, wrapped up empty-handed on October 17, with police shifting to a criminal probe via Task Force Horizon, analyzing drone footage for hidden clues on the property. But why the deadlock? No tracks, no scavengers, no signs of wandering off, leaving us questioning if this was an accident, foul play, or something covered up right under their noses. We dive into the 4 most important key insights. And beyond that, what's Gus's current status? Join us as we unpack it all. The core of the search. Firstly, let's lay out the most prominent and well-supported assumptions to understand the full picture of this case, and where things might truly stand with Gus right now. The first assumption, and sadly the most heartbreaking one, is that Gus may no longer be alive. As we dig deeper into this assumption, it's clear that the possibility of Gus having died is gaining traction among experts and investigators.
It's a matter of, we need to find answers for the family. We'll do as best we can to the extent we can, but a line will be in the sand where they're going to say, we've done everything possible, and this may remain a mystery forever and a day.
Charlie Bezzina, a retired Victoria police detective, laid it out plainly in his comments, stating that authorities have done everything in their power. He extended condolences to the family, including Gus's father Joshua Lamont, but his words carry a heavy implication of resignation. Bezzina conceded that many questions remain unanswered and might never be resolved, which reads as an acknowledgement that Gus is likely no longer alive. This sentiment echoes through the analysis, where the absence of any breakthroughs after extensive efforts points to a grim outcome, though time could still reveal hidden truths, as it has in other true crime cases. The terrain itself bolsters this line of thinking. The outback's harsh conditions accelerate decomposition if someone has perished, making recovery difficult even with advanced tools. After the search wrapped up on October 17, 2025, without any significant updates, the case dragged on for nearly a month with 0 traces.
Our thoughts are with Gus and his family. We would love to have resolution to this matter, but not any more than the family with themselves.
No clothing, no definitive footprints beyond the initial one that's been questioned, and no signs of survival in an area where temperatures hit 36 degrees Celsius. We see how this environment doesn't forgive delays, and with Gus being just 4 years old, his vulnerability to heat, dehydration, and exposure would have been immediate. Criminology experts have weighed in, suggesting scenarios where Gus might have been hidden inside the home or subjected to mistreat prior to death. This stems from the complete lack of evidence outdoors, no scavenger birds circling, no animal tracks indicating a drag, nothing to support a natural demise or wandering off.
My heart breaks for him, all dads like their boys, all the kids, so, it's just hard.
Jason's got 20 years experience in the SES and skills in tracking. Never has he found absolutely no trace like this.
It's been searched, he's not there.
and he believes the conspiracy theories are just that.
It's not going to happen. A wedge tail will pick up a kilo or two. You know, they're not going to pick up a 4-year-old. There's no pigs, there's no wild dogs, there's no fox.
The shift from rescue operations to a criminal investigation on October 5, 2025, underscores this pivot. What started as a hopeful hunt for a lost child turned into a probe assuming the worst, with hopes of finding him alive fading fast. After 2 weeks, the mounting questions only amplify the sense that survival odds are minimal. Bezina's phrasing, "Police have done everything they can," strikes as a tacit admission of hopelessness. It's not just about exhaustion of resources, it's about facing the reality that no live leads have emerged. The SA police update from October 17 confirms this, noting the latest phase ended without locating any traces of Gus despite sweeping an additional 95 square kilometers with the Australian Defence Force. They've moved to data analysis from drones and AI, a step that implies the focus is now on recovery rather than rescue. Why push into tech-heavy reviews if there's still a belief in survival? Reports from Now to Love on October 21 highlight how SA police affirmed the search's conclusion the previous weekend, marking 2 major efforts that yielded nothing but disappointment. The tone is somber, emphasizing the heartbreaking news for the family. Similarly, Daily Mail's coverage on October 20 describes the failures of both searches, with soldiers departing looking defeated, paving the way for darker theories that include Gus's death. The absence of progress invites speculation on what might have happened in those critical early hours. BBC's report from October 17 notes the searches end while the investigation presses on, hinting at low expectations given the prolonged timeline and challenging landscape. Wikipedia entries on the disappearance echo this, pointing out the halt on October 7, the irrelevant footprint and the overall lack of evidence, leading to assumptions of death due to Gus's young age and the unforgiving conditions. NY Post on October 17 reinforces the biopic picture, detailing the closure after 2 rounds with no clues, underscoring the dire situation since September 27. These elements collectively build a case for this assumption, where the exhaustive searches, covering over 500 square kilometers with drones, dogs, and divers, have turned up empty. The transition to criminal scrutiny suggests authorities are preparing for closure without a living resolution. But if decomposition is so rapid, why hasn't any remnant surfaced? And what does the family's limited public response say about their own expectations? The criminologist's ideas about pre-death abuse raise even tougher queries. Could something inside the homestead have led to this? The data analysis phase might hold answers, but for now, the weight of inaction points heavily toward tragedy. We can affirm that the likelihood of a bad outcome is very high, however. If so, who caused this incident? Is it feasible for a child to disappear on their own in such a dangerous surrounding area? It starts with ruling out natural explanations entirely. No wandering off into the wilderness, no attack from wildlife like dingoes or pigs, because the evidence simply doesn't support it.
Well, I think they'd be looking at possible accident. They would be looking at third-party involvement in terms of the child being abducted. I think all avenues of inquiry are open at the moment.
Forensic psychologist Tim Watson-Munro says for him, the case is a chilling reminder of another little boy who went missing, William Tyrrell.
We remain optimistic, but being realistic, given the effluxion of time, if he's wandered off somewhere on the property, it's hard to see how a 4-year-old could survive on their own resources.
Experts point out that if it were a simple misadventure, as mentioned, we'd see scattered clothing or clear signs of struggle, but there's none of that here. Instead, the complete void shifts the focus to deliberate interference, where someone intentionally erased traces to hide what really happened. This leads straight into the idea that foul play isn't just possible but probable, especially when considering how illogical a wander-off scenario becomes under the circumstances. As dusk fell and temperatures dropped, why would there be no trail at all, no scent for dogs to pick up, no partial footprints leading anywhere? Comparisons to cases like John Bennett Ramsey highlight this, where the lack of outdoor marks, like absent prints in frost or dust, points to something contained within familiar boundaries, not a random escape into the elements. The analysis suggests that any accident might have been covered up, much like in the Madeleine McCann situation, where a fall was allegedly concealed along with all evidence, motivated by complex family pressures that couldn't afford exposure. Criminology insights bolster this, proposing that the child could have been concealed indoors or harmed in a way that left no outdoor clues, with no scavenger activity like birds or foxes circling to indicate an exposed fate. If it were natural, wouldn't there be some remnant by now, some hint that nature took its course? The absence supports human orchestration, where steps were taken to ensure nothing surfaced during those massive searches. Police moves reflect this evolving view too, shifting from rescue mode to a full criminal probe early on, setting up a task force to dig into potential wrongdoing, even if they publicly downplay suspicions while zeroing in on the property and personal histories. We see this human element emphasized in the suspect considerations, where the pool includes outsiders but leans heavily toward those closest. For strangers, it's about checking the small local community, alibis, past records, any prior connections to the site. But the real weight falls on family members, given their access and control. Why focus there? Because dynamics reveal instabilities that could spark or conceal foul play, the father living apart due to ongoing conflicts, avoiding the property even after the incident, raising questions about what tensions simmered beneath the surface. Shannon Murray emerges as a key figure in this human-driven theory, as the last person to see the child playing on that mound of sand around 5 p.m., while she was inside preparing dinner and watching the younger sibling. In true crime patterns, that last seen by role often turns scrutiny inward, like with Scott Peterson or Chris Watts, where proximity bred opportunity for harm or hiding. What was she cooking, and how long did it distract her? Sandwiches for quick prep, or a roast demanding constant attention? If foul play originated here, her position as the family matriarch, owning the station and holding the power, means any involvement could ripple through everyone, protecting the setup at all costs. Josie Murray draws similar attention, with behaviors labeled unusual, not immediately notifying the father, rejecting outside volunteers, and stepping up as the main spokesperson with vague statements. Community chatter on platforms questions this, wondering if her transition, kept secret from her own father until after his death, ties into deeper family secrets that might motivate concealment. Why the reluctance to let locals help search the land, if transparency was the goal? This secrecy aligns with a human cause rooted in internal strife, perhaps fearing that exposure could unravel the household. Joshua Lamont's separation adds another layer, living 2 hours away, and only learning of the disappearance from police at midnight. Despite the parents still being a couple, his absence from the property since, citing past disputes, prompts queries: what conflicts made the place unsafe for the kids, as he reportedly felt. If human actions drove this, his detachment might mask involvement or knowledge, especially with 2 young children in the mix. Jessica Lamont remains more shadowy, living on site with the infant, but offering little public detail, which fuels speculation about her role in any cover-up. With the younger brother present, analyses compare to Summer Wells, where hiding an incident protected custody. Could a similar fear have prompted actions here to shield the remaining child from removal? The task force's emphasis on family history and the property suggests they're probing these angles, using drone data and AI to uncover hidden manipulations that point to human intent over accident. Volunteer observations reinforce this, noting no wildlife signs that would mark a natural end, implying deliberate hiding by someone with control over the area. Why no circling predators if exposure happened outdoors? Experts like a criminologist drawing parallels to William Terrell stress third-party possibilities, but urge thorough family checks, given the clean scene. Former detectives advocate this approach, highlighting how internal reviews often reveal the truth in stalled searches. Online discussions and blog theories echo community beliefs in intentional acts, blending accident cover-ups with targeted disappearances, often circling back to family due to the controlled environment. Police persistence in analysis, despite no overt suspicions, hints at exploring these human elements, perhaps from outsiders slipping in, or, more likely, from within where motives hide in plain sight. What if the refusal of help was to prevent accidental discoveries? And how do these family fractures align with the timing, creating windows for unchecked actions? This unified view paints foul play as a human-engineered event, where concealment tactics erased what nature would have left behind. The contradictions between official calm and expert urgings raise more questions. If not family, why the deep dive into their past? The matriarch's command, the hidden transitions, the absent father, all weave a narrative of internal human cause, demanding closer looks at those with the most to lose or gain. For a larger viewpoint, it seems quite a ploy when it appears that all judgments are directing suspicion towards the Lamont family members. However, we still have another suspect that's been talked about a lot lately. Benjamin. Is he really the one who caused Gus's disappearance or not? We've been piecing together the threads on this one, and while the family dynamics keep pulling the spotlight, Benjamin McCullough pops up as that wild-card figure who's sparked all sorts of whispers. He's the 40-year-old guy who vanished just a day earlier, driving erratically down the Stewart Highway south of Glendambo, and his car turning up abandoned the very next morning has folks wondering if there's overlap. But let's break it down step by step, starting with what ties these two cases together in people's minds. The potential link boils down to timing and proximity, nothing more concrete so far. Benjamin was last spotted acting strangely behind the wheel on that highway, with truck drivers radioing in concerns about his swerving and unpredictable moves. His Hyundai Getz, registered in Western Australia, was found ditched in thick bush about 10 kilometers off the road near Wirramina, right on the day Gus was reported gone. That's a 2-hour drive from the Oak Park station. Not exactly next door but close enough in this outback to raise eyebrows. We hear stories from locals about how remote areas like this see few strangers, so any unusual activity stands out. One trucker recounted seeing a man matching Benjamin's description looking wild-eyed and disoriented, pulling over erratically before vanishing into the scrub. Could he have wandered toward the Lamont property in a confused state, stumbling into something involving Gus? That's the kind of question floating around online forums, where users speculate he might have crossed paths accidentally or intentionally. Digging into Benjamin's background doesn't yield much, which only fuels the mystery. Little is public about his life, no family statements, no clear reason he was in that stretch of South Australia. He hailed from Western Australia based on the plates. But why head east into the desert? Some reports paint him as potentially distressed, perhaps dealing with personal issues that led to his erratic driving. We consider if he was on the run, or just lost, but without more details, it's all guesswork. The car's discovery came quick, with police tracing it back to him almost immediately. But inside they found no signs of foul play, or clues pointing elsewhere. No phone pings after that afternoon, no belongings scattered to suggest a hike gone wrong. It's like he evaporated, much like the initial theories around Gus, but without the family angle to scrutinize. Now, on the investigation side for Benjamin, police kicked things off fast after those trucker reports. They deployed SES volunteers, drones scanning the bush, and local trackers combing the area around Wirramina. Footprints were spotted near the car, but they didn't lead far and weren't confirmed as his. We know they appealed for dashcam footage from anyone on the highway between Port Augusta and Glendambo that afternoon, hoping to piece together his last movements. A press conference early in October addressed both cases side by side, with officials fielding questions about possible ties. They stressed the searches were separate, but the joint mention only amplified public curiosity. By mid-October, the active hunt for Benjamin scaled back, much like Gus's, shifting to data review and public tips. Crime Stoppers got involved, urging calls if anyone spotted him or his car earlier. One angle they pursued was whether his disappearance was voluntary, maybe a walkabout gone bad, or if something external intervened. But no arrests, no suspects named in his case, just an open file waiting for leads. We see how this parallels yet diverges from Gus's probe, where the task force dove into family histories and property scans. For Benjamin, it's more about retracing a solo journey, interviewing those truckers who saw him swerve. One driver described him pulling over suddenly, looking agitated, perhaps arguing on a phone, though that's unconfirmed. Another mentioned him asking for directions at a remote stop, seeming out of sorts. Police checked nearby CCTV, but in the Outback, cameras are sparse. They even brought in dogs to sniff around the car site, turning up nothing definitive. By October 17, with Gus's search wrapping up empty-handed, Benjamin's case lingered in the background, with fresh appeals for info but no breakthroughs. It's telling that while Gus's file went to the Missing Persons Unit for long-term review, Benjamin's seems stuck in limbo, perhaps because adults disappearing voluntarily isn't uncommon. Turning to why the connection odds feel slim, it all circles back to zero hard evidence linking the two. Police have flat out stated they're not probing any tie. No shared witnesses. No overlapping forensics. No motive that bridges them. Benjamin's erratic drive happened hours before Gus was last seen playing on that sand mound, and the distance, while not insurmountable, would require him trekking through harsh terrain without a trace. If he did reach Oak Park, why no sightings from the family or neighbors? The abandoned car had no kid-related items inside, no signs he'd encountered anyone else. We think about those sinister fears amplified in headlines, calling him a wild-eyed man, potentially lurking, but that's media spin without backup. Fake images circulated online showing a boy like Gus with a stranger in a car, about 100 kilometers away, but fact checks debunked them as hoaxes, likely stirring panic rather than truth. Experts weigh in cautiously, noting that while third-party involvement can't be ruled out entirely, the lack of crossover makes it improbable. A former detective on similar cases suggested police would have flagged any red flags early, like if Benjamin had a history of odd behavior around kids, but nothing surfaced. Community outrage bubbled up, with some accusing authorities of prioritizing Benjamin's search over Gus's, posting rants like, "Scale back for a child but push for this guy." Yet, records show both got substantial resources initially, with Benjamin's tapering off sooner due to the adult factor. Statistically, many resolve as self-harm or voluntary absences. We ponder if Benjamin met his own end in the bush, dehydrated or lost, unrelated to any crime wave. The low likelihood stems from investigative silos too. Gus's task force zeroes in on the property and internals, using AI on drone footage for hidden spots there, not branching out to highway leads. Benjamin's file stays with general missing persons. No joint ops mentioned. If there was a real link, wouldn't we see merged teams or shared pressers beyond that one? Public speculation thrives on the coincidence, 2 vanishings in 24 hours in the same remote swath, but coincidences happen in sparse areas where people go missing for unrelated reasons. Benjamin's story reads more like a breakdown or accident, his car left with keys possibly inside, no theft signs. Contrast that with Gus's clean scene, no vehicle involvement. We keep circling the what if. Suppose Benjamin, in a dazed state, did wander east and spot the boy alone, what then? No struggle marks, no witnesses, no body trail. Or if he abducted him, how without transport or planning? These fall flat against the evidence wall. Police commissioners reiterate all angles get checked. But without GI pay foul play in Gus's case, Benjamin remains a side note. Online sleuths push narratives. One claiming a dashcam clip showed a similar car near Yunta, but it turned out unrelated. Another tale from a forum user, a relative heard rumors of Benjamin's mental health struggles, perhaps explaining his drive but not connecting dots. This low connection rate doesn't kill the theory outright. Outback mysteries linger, but it shifts weight back inward. Benjamin's probe grinds on with tip lines open, while Gus evolves into data dives. We note how Benjamin's family silence mirrors the Lamont's low profile, but without overlap. It's 2 tragedies, not one intertwined. Why no shared forensics if paths crossed? The ratio stays slim, hinged on speculation over substance. Where are they hiding Gus Lamont? Turning back to the suspicions about the Lamont family, we have some very clear clues to prove those suspicions. First is about who was the last person to see Gus. It all points to Shannon Murray, the maternal grandmother, as the one who had eyes on him right before he vanished. She's the one confirmed to have been watching over him that afternoon. With reports detailing how he was playing in that mound of dirt under her care, while his mother Jessica, and the other grandparent Josie, were out tending the sheep herd, about 10 kilometers away. This puts Shannon squarely in the role of the sole adult present at the homestead during that critical window. The timing lays it out precisely as around 5:00 p.m. on that day. Gus was spotted outside near the sand pile in front of the house. By about 5:30 p.m., when Shannon called him in and got no response, the alarm bells started internally. But here's where it gets sticky. The family didn't alert police right away. They searched on their own for roughly 3 hours, only dialing authorities around 8:30 p.m. That 3-hour gap stands out as a prime window of opportunity in any investigation, the kind where actions could unfold without outside eyes, raising questions about what might have transpired in that unaccounted time. Shannon's account of her actions adds layers to this. She was inside the house, juggling cooking dinner and keeping an eye on the 1-year-old Ronnie at the same time. When she wrapped up or stepped out to check, Gus was gone. But we have to probe deeper. Was she handling both tasks simultaneously? Did she complete the meal before searching for Gus, or did she interrupt cooking to look? Maybe she even fed Ronnie first. These details matter because they sketch out how divided her attention might have been, and without corroboration, they leave room for doubt about the sequence. In the family structure, Shannon holds a central spot as Jessica's mother, living at the station alongside Josie, her spouse who's transitioned, and Jessica with the 2 young kids, Gus and Ronnie. The father, Joshua, lives about 100 kilometers off, not on site, so at the moment Gus disappeared, Shannon was the only adult around, effectively the sole guardian. This setup means no other grown-up was there to verify what went down, making her narrative the linchpin of the timeline. Several suspicious elements and inconsistencies crop up in her story. For starters, no one else can confirm exactly what she was doing when Gus went missing. Was it really cooking? And if so, what dish? How long did it take? Is there physical proof in the home, like half-prepped food or a hot stove? Juggling meal prep and watching a toddler isn't easy, especially in a basic farm setup without cameras or close neighbors. Why let a 4-year-old play unsupervised outside as evening approached? And beyond that, her total silence to the media stands out. No pleas for help, no interviews, nothing. It's like the person who last saw him is the one staying most hidden. Which flips a switch in true crime patterns where silence often signals more. Tying into the family web, Josie's out with Jessica herding sheep far off, so Shannon's alone with the boys. Joshua only hears later from police knocking at his door in the middle of the night, underscoring how isolated that half hour was. No one but Shannon can recount those final 30 minutes with Gus, and that isolation amplifies the focus on her. This detail gets flagged as a major overlooked clue, because investigations into child disappearances always zero in on the last witness. We've seen it play out in cases like Chris Watts, where the father was the last to see his family alive, and ended up confessing to their murders after initial denials. In that instance, Watts claimed his wife took the kids out early, but cracks in his story, much like potential gaps in meal prep timelines, led to the truth emerging. Often, not always, but frequently, that last seen person shifts from witness to person of interest, or worse as the layers peel back. Shannon's social and power role in the household cements why this clue matters. She's essentially the matriarch, likely owning the station, wielding the authority, and making the calls. If something implicates her, say an accident under her watch or worse, the whole family stands to lose their home and stability, including little Ronnie. That kind of stake provides a motive for circling wagons, keeping quiet, or even coordinating a cover story to protect the core. The wandered-off idea has pretty much crumbled under scrutiny. If he was out there, the hordes of searchers with dogs and drones would have picked up something by now. So, turning inward, Shannon's position as the last eyes on him suggests she holds key insights. Whether it's an unintended mishap she witnessed, or something more deliberate that's been buried. These elements stack up, painting a picture where the answers might lie closer to home than the vast outback stretches. Supporting the theory relating to Shannon, we turn our attention to the potential hiding spots right on the property, starting with that circular concrete structure behind the main house. It's described as a traditional reservoir, the kind of thing you'd expect on a remote farm for water storage, sitting there unassuming, but with features that make it a prime candidate for concealment. Its sealed design means it's hard to access casually, and if it's functional with water inside, decomposition could accelerate without leaving obvious traces. We question whether it's operational at all. Does it hold water, or is it dry and forgotten? And has it been thoroughly searched, perhaps with divers or probes, since it's under family control and might not draw immediate scrutiny from outside teams? Being right behind the homestead, it's easily reachable by someone like Shannon Murray, who was alone with the kids that afternoon, or Josie Murray, supporting the idea of an internal cover-up where no one had to venture far. This spot ties directly into family access, as it's part of the core living area where daily routines unfold. If something happened nearby, slipping something into that reservoir could be quick and discreet, especially during those 3 hours the family searched on their own before calling police. Without reports confirming it was checked, say, drained or inspected, we're left wondering if it was overlooked in the initial sweeps, adding to the suspicion that key areas under family oversight weren't probed deeply enough. Moving to the second sand pile, we note how the property has not one but 2 mounds near the front, with this one positioned to the left in the images and appearing fresher than the other where Gus was supposedly playing. That newer look raises flags. It's like the sand was recently moved or added, making it a spot for hasty burial without needing tools or time to dig deep. Sand shifts easily, so covering something up could blend right in, especially close to the house where no long haul is required. We ask which pile was Gus actually on, and how long has this second one been there? The timing of its appearance could signal activity right after the disappearance, pointing to someone familiar with the layout taking advantage. This mound's proximity to family members amplifies its relevance. Shannon was inside, but with the kids under her watch, and the family refused outside volunteers, potentially limiting checks on these areas. It's near another structure too, boosting the chance it was used for quick concealment if an incident occurred nearby. Without confirmation that searchers dug into it or used ground-penetrating radar, it remains a lingering question mark in the narrative. Then there's that discolored brown blob of sand in the foreground of the photos, a small patch that's noticeably darker and richer than the surrounding red dirt, sticking out like a sore thumb near the center. This oddity suggests recent disturbance, the kind where soil gets turned over and not perfectly matched when refilled, hinting at a rushed burial attempt. Why the color difference if it's just natural? It could indicate something was placed there and covered hastily, not blending with the environment as older dirt would. Positioned close to the main house, this spot falls squarely under family domain, accessible to Shannon during her solo time with Gus and Ronnie, or perhaps Josie or Jessica later. That 3-hour delay before reporting gives ample opportunity for such manipulation, and with no media or police notes on testing it, like soil samples or canine alerts, it heightens the doubt about overlooked hiding places controlled by those inside. Broadening out, these spots align with the overall lack of outdoor traces, no circling birds of prey, no distant footprints, no discarded clothing, that we'd expect if exposure happened far afield. Instead, everything suggests containment near home, where family could manage without external eyes. Their refusal of volunteer help and that initial self-search period point to possible efforts to restrict access, ensuring areas like the reservoir, second sand pile, or brown patch weren't disturbed prematurely. Expert views reinforce this, with one volunteer noting that if a body were out in the open, natural indicators like scavengers would show, but their absence backs a hidden scenario in spots like these. We recall how in the JonBenet Ramsey case, the 6-year-old was found in her own basement, tucked away in a windowless wine cellar behind a latched door that wasn't immediately obvious. Police arrived assuming a kidnapping based on a ransom note, searching the house, but missing the cellar at first because the family directed focus elsewhere. It took hours for the father to discover her there, wrapped in a blanket with signs of staging. That parallel here implies similar concealment in familiar, controlled spaces, the reservoir as a sealed vault, the fresh sand as easy cover, the discolored patch as a quick fix, where family influence could delay or divert scrutiny. These elements stack up in a pattern where proximity and control make internal hiding feasible, turning everyday farm features into potential secrets. The task force's emphasis on property scans with drones and AI suggests they're revisiting such spots for overlooked clues, probing what might lie beneath the surface. Lastly, turning to the second small house, we have some clues that point to the possibility that someone is living there or hiding something. This structure stands out in the images as the second smallest building on the property, positioned close to that fresher-looking sand mound we discussed earlier. Zooming in reveals a satellite dish mounted on it, a chimney poking up, and all sorts of gear scattered around, tools, materials, and everyday items that suggest ongoing use. There's clear evidence of maintenance work happening right there, with stuff piled up as if someone's been fixing it up recently. It's not some abandoned shed. It looks lived in, or at least actively tended, tied directly to the area where the disappearance unfolded. We can't help but question who exactly occupies this place. Does a family member stay there, or is it for hired help? The setup raises specifics. Where's Ronnie's room in relation to this building? What about Gus's or Jess's? And tying it back, we'd need a full layout of the kitchen where Shannon claimed to be prepping dinner, to map out sight lines and distances. These aren't random queries. They probe how this structure fits into daily life, especially since it's the one most linked to both sand piles. If someone was in there that afternoon, they could have seen or heard something, or been involved without drawing eyes from the main house. Suspicious elements pile up around it too. Its spot near the second sand mound, which appears newly disturbed, makes it a hotspot for potential activity that afternoon. Signs of repairs and paraphernalia hint at regular comings and goings. Yet there's no public record of police giving it a thorough once-over during those initial searches. We picture how it could serve as a quick stop, maybe for stashing clothes, evidence, or worse, without needing to trek far. In the true crime realm, spots like this often hold secrets. Think of Gannon Stauch, the 11-year-old whose stepmother allegedly hid his body in a suitcase in the garage for moving it, all while the family home was under watch. Police missed the initial hiding because the focus was outward, much like how this auxiliary building might have slipped under radar amid the vast land sweeps. The possibilities split in intriguing ways. On one hand, it could house someone, perhaps a family extension like Josie keeping a separate space, or a short-term renter handling farm chores. The chimney implies heating and cooking. The dish means entertainment, and the maintenance suggests investment in livability. But no one's come forward as residing there at the time, and with the family's tight lid on details, it's odd that such a witness hasn't surfaced in any reports. If occupied, that person should be a key voice, yet the silence is deafening, echoing cases where hidden residents turned out pivotal, like in Harley Dilly's tragedy, where the teen squeezed into a chimney of a nearby vacant house, trapped without anyone noticing for weeks despite community hunts. On the flip side, its role in concealment feels just as plausible. Secluded yet central, it could act as temporary storage for anything needing to vanish fast, a body, items from the scene, or traces of a struggle. We recall John Bennett Ramsey, found in her own basement wine cellar, a spot the family knew intimately, but searchers overlooked initially because the narrative pointed elsewhere. Here, with no mentions in briefings of it being cleared, perhaps with thermal scans for heat anomalies or dogs sniffing for scents, it lingers as unchecked territory. The gear around it could mask fresh disturbances, blending any digging or moving into routine work. Family ties make this even more compelling. The whole station falls under Murray ownership, run by Shannon and Josie, with Jess on site, but Josh distant. This building might be a partition area for privacy amid tensions, or a spot repurposed after the fact. Their refusal of outside help during those first hours could have shielded it from prying eyes, allowing time to tidy or relocate. Technical problems like ground-penetrating radar could reveal buried changes beneath, or fiber analysis might pick up residues linking back to the kids' rooms. Without those steps documented, we ponder if it's the overlooked link in the chain. These features combine with the quiet around the family, no schematics shared, no deep dives reported, to form a picture where this structure isn't just background. It's intertwined with the sand areas, human activity evident yet unexplained, begging for closer looks that might crack the facade. Gus should have been found sooner. Diving deeper into the issues of the search, it can be seen that Gus, in the most positive scenario, could have been found if not for the arising problems, and these problems largely involve the contribution of the Lamont family. The family's delay in reporting stands out as a critical misstep right from the start. They spent about 3 hours searching on their own after noticing he was missing around 5:30 p.m., when Shannon Murray called him in and got no answer, only alerting police at 8:30 p.m. that evening. This gap created a significant window where traces could have faded fast in the harsh outback conditions, with high temperatures up to 36 degrees Celsius, dehydration risks, and rugged terrain that a 4-year-old wouldn't navigate far. We look at how that 3-hour holdup played out practically. If they'd called authorities immediately, teams could have mobilized within the golden 48-hour window, focusing on a tight radius since kids that age rarely stray beyond 2 kilometers, as survival expert Jake Kassar has pointed out. Instead, the delay meant starting in the dark, with wind and dust already potentially erasing footprints or scents that dogs might have picked up fresh. It's a straightforward chain. Early report leads to early deployment, which boosts chances of spotting clues like clothing or marks before nature wipes them clean. Police response added its own layer of slowdown. They spotted a footprint 500 meters from the house that first night, but it took until the next day to analyze and link it possibly to Gus. Former Officer Andrew Lunig called this out as a key fumble, noting that time is everything in these environments. Quick verification could have narrowed the zone right away, avoiding the spread-out effort that covered 470 square kilometers initially without results. We see how this compounded the family's hesitation, turning what could have been a focused hunt into a broader, less efficient operation. The impact shows in the search phases. That first push from September 28 to October 4 involved over 100 people, drones, tracking dogs, and PLAR planes. But it yielded nothing solid. If the footprint had been confirmed sooner, resources might have zeroed in on a smaller area, saving effort and catching details before erosion set in. Kasser stressed this in his comments. Early efforts should prioritize the immediate vicinity for young kids, not fan out wide, and the reporting lag from the family amplified that error. Volunteer input highlights the missed potential too. SES member Jason O'Connell mentioned sweeping one's 200 square kilometers thoroughly without traces, implying that kicking off right after 5:30 p.m. could have captured scents or items before weather blurred them. It's not hard to picture. An immediate call brings in teams while light's still good, dogs hit the ground running, and any faint trail gets followed before nightfall erases it. Updates from SA Police on October 17 reinforce this. The second search phase, running from October 14 to 17, added 95 square kilometers with no finds, shifting to drone and AI data review. A sign that initial delays might have let opportunities slip when evidence was clearest. We consider how, without that 3-hour buffer and the next day footprint check, the whole operation could have pivoted faster. Perhaps spotting something in those vital early hours. Comparisons to other cases drive the point home. In the John Bennett Ramsey situation, delays in thoroughly checking the home, stemming from an initial kidnapping assumption, meant missing the body in the basement for hours, even as police were on site. Similarly here, if police had honed in near the house right after a prompt report, rather than waiting through the family's solo effort, they might have uncovered leads before assumptions about wandering took hold. Outback weather factors in heavily too. Winds and dust accelerate breakdown and scatter signs, so that 3-hour family delay, plus police's verification lag, likely wiped out scents or prints entirely. It's a direct hit to recovery odds, turning a recoverable situation into one where even massive sweeps fall short. Expert breakdowns add weight. From recent coverage, former Detective Gary Jubilin, known for the William Terrell probe, noted that child disappearances demand instant focus near the last seen spot, and any initial slowdown, from family alerts to police actions, can doom early detection, especially in harsh spots like this. The starting search context underscores it that September 28 to October 4 phase deployed drones, dogs, ATVs, and over 100 personnel across vast ground, but inefficiency crept in due to the late start, with potential clues degraded by time. A criminologist echoed this, stressing that 24 to 48 hours are make or break, and family reporting lags can erase positioning chances when the child is likely still close. Lack of swift action stands as the core issue. From the NZ coverage, another expert highlighted immediate response in kid cases as essential, with family delays potentially costing the window to locate before distance or elements intervene. Beside that, we continue gathering details on this case, focusing on the family's decision to refuse volunteer help and how odd that stands out in searches for missing kids. From the outset, the Lamont family limited access to their Oak Park station, allowing only South Australian Police and the State Emergency Service to enter while turning away local volunteers and hunters. This came during one of the largest operations the police had ever mounted, spanning 10 days with over 100 personnel involved. Yet the family's stance kept community members on the sidelines. Josie Murray, acting as the main spokesperson, stated they were still searching for the boy, but declined any additional aid from outsiders, sparking immediate controversy because such refusals are rare in similar situations. This choice struck many as unusual, especially in remote outback areas where community involvement is typically encouraged and vital for covering vast terrain quickly. Locals familiar with the land, like hunters who know every gully and track, could have brought invaluable eyes to the effort, but they were shut out. We see posts on X capturing the frustration, such as one user saying, "If it were my child missing, I'd let anyone help. Why lock it down like that?" This reflects a broader community suspicion that the family might have reasons for keeping things tight, though police maintained it's their right to protect private property. Without those extra hands, the search relied solely on official teams, potentially missing spots only locals might spot. The refusal amplified conspiracy theories online, with some speculating hidden motives on the property, even if no concrete evidence backed it up. Police proceeded regardless, incorporating drones and tracking dogs, but the lack of volunteer input From those who know the region, Inside Out likely slowed gathering of grassroots intel. A CS volunteer noted that Gus wasn't on the property after scanning 200 kilometers thoroughly, but without broader community participation, that conclusion felt incomplete to many. We think about how this isolation reduced the collective push, turning what could have been a unified front into a more contained operation. Compared to other child searches in Australia, this refusal feels particularly strange. In cases like William Terrell, who vanished from his backyard in 2014 without a trace, the family welcomed widespread community help to expand the hunt, drawing in locals who combed familiar bushland. That collaboration kept momentum high and uncovered leads that officials alone might miss. Similarly, in international examples such as Madeleine McCann or John Bennett Ramsey, families often called for all hands on deck, rallying volunteers to blanket areas and share tips. Here, the Lamont's approach bucked that trend, going against the Outback tradition where everyone pitches in, neighbors, farmers, even passersby, because isolation demands it. We recall how in those other instances, volunteer surges increased early detection odds. Spotting overlooked details in terrain police aren't as attuned to. Experts have weighed in on the impact, with a former detective praising the police's full effort, but noting how excluding locals familiar with the ground hinders info flow from those who traverse it daily. In child hunts, that community knowledge is key, often turning up subtle signs like disturbed earth or unusual tracks. The Lamont's decision, by contrast, created a barrier, leaving questions about why they'd forego that boost when time is everything. Posts like one from a local account urged, "Police and family need to call us in more. This is the Outback, everyone's ready to help," highlighting how the refusal clashed with the norm of solidarity in these crises. This oddity stands out because child searches thrive on openness, where refusing aid can delay breakthroughs. In the Terrell case, volunteers helped map remote spots, keeping hope alive longer. Here, with the family holding firm, it fueled doubts and limited the human element that often cracks these puzzles. We see how this choice, while legal, deviated from the playbook that has aided recoveries in past Outback disappearances, where communal sweeps have unearthed vital clues officials overlooked. The pushback grew online, with discussions pointing to how such isolation might protect secrets, even as police affirmed their work wasn't impeded. In essence, this refusal marked a departure from the collaborative spirit that defines successful child rescues, leaving many to wonder about missed chances in those early, critical days. Lastly, we continue piecing together the elements that could have changed everything in this search, turning our attention to the family's unusual silence and how it might have hindered progress. The quiet from those closest to Gus stands out as a stark contrast to what we'd expect in a desperate hunt for a missing child. Instead of rallying cries for help or detailed appeals to the public, their restraint feels like a barrier, signaling a reluctance to push forward rather than an active drive to find him. No parent truly seeking their kid would stay this muted. It's the opposite of mobilizing every resource, leaving gaps where momentum could have built. Shannon Murray's silence hits hardest, as the one who last saw Gus playing on that sand mound around 5:00 p.m. She was directly responsible for him that afternoon, juggling dinner prep and watching the younger sibling Ronnie inside the house. Yet, she hasn't stepped forward with any public pleas, interviews, or calls for assistance, despite being the key witness to his final moments. This lack of outreach comes across as odd, almost like stepping back from the effort instead of amplifying it. We think about how sharing more, like clarifying if she finished the meal before checking on him or paused midway, could have sharpened the timeline for investigators. But her complete absence from the spotlight suggests disengagement, not the urgent push a caregiver would make if determined to bring him home. Josie Murray, stepping up as the family's main voice, offers only vague responses that do little to fuel the search. Her statement on October 12, "We are still searching for the boy," lacks any call for wider help or fresh details that could jog memories in the community. This minimal input feels counter to continuing the hunt. It's passive, not proactive, leaving the public without specifics to act on. Parents in these situations typically flood channels with descriptions, timelines, and pleas, but here it's restrained, almost as if avoiding deeper scrutiny. That approach doesn't align with wanting to expand the net, it's more like containing it. A move no one desperate for answers would choose. Joshua Lamont's quiet absence adds another layer, as Gus's father hasn't returned to the station since the incident. despite being the biological dad still in a relationship with the mother. He learned of the disappearance from police knocking at his door in the middle of the night. Yet his ongoing distance comes off as strange, like withdrawing from the process rather than diving in. Joining the ground efforts or speaking out could have galvanized support, but this silence and separation suggest otherwise. It's hard to square with a parent's instinct to do anything for their child. Instead, it appears as stepping away, not stepping up to sustain the search. These behaviors chain together into a pattern of unusual reserve, with Josie giving hazy comments, Shannon vanishing from view despite her central role, and Joshua staying physically and vocally distant. This collective quiet contrasts sharply with aiding the hunt. It's as if the drive to keep going fades, not the kind of response from anyone truly committed to recovery. Like balancing cooking and childcare, without further elaboration, go unaddressed publicly, potentially stalling leads that more openness could unlock. We see how this restraint might obscure vital details, turning what could be a flood of community tips into a trickle. Comparisons to other cases highlight just how off this feels. Take Chris Watts, who initially stayed silent about his family's whereabouts, claiming his wife left with the kids, only for his quiet demeanor to crack under pressure, revealing he'd murdered them and hidden the bodies. His lack of urgent appeals mirrored disinterest in resolution, much like here, where silence replaces calls for help. Or Scott Peterson, who remained muted after his pregnant wife's disappearance, avoiding media and public pleas, while investigators pieced together his affair and alibis. His reserve signaled evasion, not grief-driven search. In those instances, the hush preceded revelations of involvement, underscoring how no parent eager to find their child would opt for such withdrawal. It's the antithesis of rallying support. Experts note how this kind of silence complicates things, leaving questions hanging that might never resolve. Many leads in child cases come from public engagement sparked by family voices. But here the void persists, suggesting a halt rather than acceleration. It's a dynamic that doesn't fit the mold of relentless pursuit. Instead, it hints at holding back, a choice few would make if the goal was truly reunion. This pattern raises the bar on doubt, as the absence of vocal advocacy feels like conceding ground in the fight to bring him back. The Lamont family is being targeted. Diving into the police actions that signal a shift in focus, it's clearly pointing to the Lamont family as potential suspects in this perplexing case. Early on, just 8 days after the disappearance, authorities took a sharp turn from rescue efforts to a full-blown criminal investigation, establishing a dedicated task force named Horizon. This wasn't just a procedural step. It marked a clear pivot towards scrutinizing the family's property and personal histories, rather than chasing leads across the vast outback. The creation of this task force suggests they're looking beyond the idea of a child wandering off, zeroing in on the homestead itself as a key area of interest, hinting that those closest to the situation might hold the answers. The task force's focus on the Oak Park station is telling. They've demanded full access to every corner of the property, eyeing specific spots like the concrete reservoir, the second sand mound with its fresher appearance, the discolored brown patch of dirt, and the smaller secondary structure nearby. These aren't random, they're areas under direct family control, easily accessible to someone like Shannon Murray, who was the last to see Gus, or Josie Murray, who's been the family's guarded voice. The fact that the family initially barred outside volunteers from searching these grounds only heightens the suspicion that they could be shielding something. Why restrict access if there's nothing to hide? This move to probe the property so intensely positions the Lamonts as central figures in the investigation's lens, suggesting police see them as than just grieving relatives. Adding to this, police have leaned heavily into advanced technology since mid-October, using AI to analyze drone footage zeroing in on these same family-controlled areas. This isn't the kind of effort you pour into chasing a lost kid in the wilderness, it's about uncovering something hidden right underfoot. The shift to high-tech scrutiny of the homestead, where there's no trace of scavenger birds, distant footprints, or scattered clothing, implies they believe Gus didn't stray far, if at all. This focus screams suspicion of foul play within the family's domain, placing the Lamonts squarely as suspects. If he'd wandered, wouldn't there be some sign by now? The absence of natural evidence points to a deliberate act, and the family's tight grip on the property makes them prime candidates. Police are also digging into alibis, starting with Shannon Murray, who was watching Gus that afternoon while cooking and minding 1-year-old Ronnie. They're poking holes in her timeline, asking for physical proof like what meal was being prepped, what pots were out, to verify her story. Was she really so tied up that she missed Gus vanishing? The request for a house schematic to map out her sightlines from the kitchen to the yard shows they're not taking her account at face value. This kind of scrutiny, drilling into the minutiae of her actions, marks her as a person of interest, a step that screams suspect in investigative terms. No parent or guardian gets this level of attention unless police smell inconsistencies. The family's tangled relationships are under the microscope too. Joshua Lamont, living 100 miles away due to disputes, and Josie Murray, with her hidden transition kept from her own father until his death, paint a picture of a fractured household. Police are probing these tensions, looking at motives like protecting custody of Ronnie, the remaining child. Could an incident have been covered to avoid losing him to authorities? This mirrors how investigators dissect family dynamics when they suspect internal involvement, making the Lamonts not just witnesses, but potential perpetrators in their eyes. The fact that Joshua hasn't returned to the property only sharpens this focus. Why stay away if you're desperate to find your son? While police publicly dismiss rumors of foul play, their actions tell a different story. They've avoided announcing arrests or naming suspects, likely to keep the family from clamming up further, but their emphasis on cooperation while quietly checking alibis and motives betrays their direction. This guarded approach, publicly neutral but privately intense, shows they're treating the Lamonts as suspects without tipping their hand. It's a classic move to maintain pressure without spooking those under watch, reinforcing that the family is now the epicenter of suspicion. We see a striking parallel in the case of Lily and Jack Sullivan, which we got a series of videos following this case right from the beginning. Don't forget to check this. Back to the case, they are the 6- and 4-year-old siblings who vanished from Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, on May 2, 2025. There, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police made a subtle but swift shift from a missing persons search to a criminal probe within days, halting ground searches early despite initial reports suggesting the kids wandered away. They turned their attention to the family, zeroing in on the stepfather, Daniel Martel, and the mother, Malia Brooks Murray. By May 12, both were subjected to polygraph tests at the Bible Hill detachment, a move signaling they were suspects from the get-go. Even if results initially showed no signs of criminality, this quiet pivot mirrors what we're seeing with the Lamonts. Official statements downplay, but actions scream suspicion. In the Sullivan case, police didn't stop at the parents. They extended polygraphs to the grandmother, Cindy Brooks Murray, and her boyfriend Wade Paris, both clearing the tests. But the fact that multiple family members were scrutinized shows how deeply investigators dove into the household. They found a pink blanket fragment belonging to Lily in a nearby trash can, a clue that kept their focus inward rather than outward. They scoured surveillance from a Dollarama store, showing the family shopping together the day before, checked bank accounts, phone data, and GPS records of Martel and Brooks Murray, and even monitored New Brunswick borders and airports to rule out abductions. This wasn't a wild goose chase for lost kids. It was a meticulous dissection of family movements, much like the task force's current work on the Lamont's property and histories. The Sullivan investigation pulled in 11 RCMP units, including the Major Crime Unit, and leaned on support from New Brunswick, Ontario, and the National Centre of Missing Persons. Yet no breakthroughs have emerged by October 2025, with a $150,000 KD reward still active. The early halt to searches and the pivot to family scrutiny, complete with lie detector tests and data dives, echoes how the Lamont Task Force operates. They're not combing endless Outback anymore. They're using AI to re-examine the homestead, suggesting they believe the answers lie with those who control it. Why else shift so decisively inward? This pattern of quiet escalation isn't new. In Sullivan, the lack of public naming kept the family engaged while police built their case, much like the Lamonts. Cooperation is noted but paired with intense property scans. The blanket fragment in Nova Scotia parallels the odd patches or unchecked reservoir here. Small clues that keep investigators circling the home. Both cases show police avoiding loud accusations, but methodically treating family as suspects, with polygraphs in one and alibi checks in the other. If the Lamonts haven't faced lie detectors yet, the focus on Shannon's timeline and family conflicts suggests it's not far off. These moves, forming a task force, scouring the property, dissecting alibis, and leveraging tech, paint a clear picture of the Lamont families under a microscope. The absence of natural signs, like scavenger activity or distant tracks, only sharpens this focus, as does their earlier behavior, like delaying police calls or barring volunteers. It's not just about what they say, it's what they don't, and where police are looking. In Sullivan, the family became suspects when searches yielded nothing but a single clue pointing homeward. Here, the same logic applies. Every drone pass, every AI analysis, every question about that kitchen timeline screams that the Lamonts are no longer just victims but potential key players in whatever happened. We turn our attention to some educated guesses about the next moves in this investigation, drawing parallels from similar cases where the probe shifted quietly inward. First up, police might line up polygraph tests for key family members to verify alibis and uncover any inconsistencies. Shannon Murray, as the grandmother who last saw Gus playing on that sand mound while she was inside cooking and watching Ronnie, could be the first in the hot seat. They'd likely grill her on that timeline. Could she really handle both tasks without missing a beat? If her story shows cracks, like not being able to juggle meal prep and childcare simultaneously, it could flag deception or withholding, aiming to rule out any cover-up on her part. Josie Murray, stepping up as the family's voice, might follow suit, with questions zeroing in on her location herding sheep 10 kilometers away, and why she turned away volunteer help. Her vague statements could hit at hidden details, and a lie detector might probe if she's shielding something. Joshua Lamont, the father living 100 kilometers off and not returning to the property since, would probably face scrutiny too. Why the distance, and does it tie into family tensions? This could check his motives and exclude any remote involvement. Jessica Lamont, the mother on site but low on details, might get tested on her herding timeline and household dynamics, seeing if she's holding back on internal issues. And if there are any hired hands or extended relatives around the station, they could be pulled in to clear out any third-party angles within the circle. Expanding the probe, authorities could team up with federal units or experts from other states, much like broadening nets in drawn-out child cases. They'd likely pull in the Australian Federal Police for cross-border checks, scanning airports and boundaries to dismiss kidnappings or body relocations, and maybe roll out a reward, say up to 150,000 RUD, to loosen tongues without tipping their hand. Digging into records, expect a deep dive into phones, GPS data, and finances for Shannon, Josie, Joshua, and Jessica, hunting for odd transactions or messages that don't add up, like unexplained calls or movements around the disappearance time. Physical evidence analysis would ramp up too, scoring the property for overlooked items, clothes, toys, or trash contents that might echo small clues turning big in other investigations. Court documents could get unsealed partially to fish for public tips, sharing just enough to stir memories without spilling the full strategy. Monitoring edges of the state would follow, ensuring no one slipped out with evidence, keeping the circle tight while casting a wider tech net. Direction-wise, the investigation would hone in on the family core, double-checking alibis and motives like the rift between Joshua and Josie, or fears over losing custody of Ronnie. They'd ditch the wander-off theory fast, given the footprint at 500 meters leads nowhere and no scavenger signs, pivoting to internal foul play where Gus never left the grounds. Tech like AI on drone shots would dissect the homestead for hidden spots, while experts in criminology might draw in comparisons to unresolved child cases, focusing on property concealment. Appeals for info would stay targeted, asking about pre-disappearance activity near Oak Park without broadcasting family suspicions, avoiding alerts that could make folks clam up. A sad outcome mirroring other lingering cases isn't out of the question. The body might surface months later on the property, perhaps after AI spots an anomaly in a spot like the concrete reservoir or sand mound, confirming foul play but too late for closure. An arrest within the family could follow, maybe Shannon or Josie for covering an accident, leading to charges and a fractured household, much like suspicions that drag on without resolution. The whole thing could stretch into 2026 unresolved, leaving the family under eternal scrutiny like in perpetual limbo cases, with no answers despite rewards in tech. Or a tiny piece of evidence, a bit of clothing in an odd spot, could unravel it all, exposing internal tragedy and ending in convictions that shatter what's left of the unit. Finally, let's deep dive into the Gus Lamont case by reflecting on the lessons it holds, especially how a child's disappearance can spiral into something far worse. What starts as a simple wander-off in a remote area like the Outback can quickly turn into a prolonged nightmare, with no traces after weeks of massive searches involving police, drones, and defense forces. In Gus's situation, the initial assumption of him straying far gave way to darker possibilities, foul play, cover-ups, or even internal family issues, showing how fast these incidents can escalate when evidence evaporates. The harsh environment plays a role too, with high temperatures and winds erasing footprints or scents almost immediately, turning a recoverable mishap into an unsolvable puzzle. We've seen this in other cases where kids vanish from backyards or farms, and the outcome often hinges on those first hours. Delay can mean the difference between rescue and recovery, or worse, no closure at all. The investigation process demands extreme caution, as mishandling can prolong suffering or lead to wrongful blame. Police shifted from rescue to criminal probe early here, forming a task force to scrutinize the property and family histories, using AI on drone footage to spot hidden clues. This approach makes sense when outdoor signs are absent, no scavenger birds, no distant tracks, but it requires balance to avoid tunnel vision. We note how verifying alibis, like Shannon's timeline of cooking and watching Ronnie, or probing family tensions, must be thorough yet respectful, without jumping to conclusions. Rushing judgments can damage lives, as seen when rumors spiral online. Instead, authorities should layer in tech like polygraphs or data analysis while keeping the public informed selectively. Caution also means expanding beyond the family if needed, checking third parties or community leads to ensure no stone goes unturned. In Gus's case, the focus on the homestead highlights how investigations evolve when nature yields nothing, but it underscores the need for transparency to maintain trust. Above all, these cases call for a comprehensive view, considering every angle: environmental, familial, and communal. The Outback's isolation amplifies risk for kids, where a moment's distraction can lead to tragedy, but we must weigh family dynamics too, like separations or secrets, without assuming guilt. Comprehensive means integrating experts in survival, criminology, and tech from the start, as delays in narrowing search zones can waste resources on vast areas when answers might lie close. It also involves community input, though here the family's limits on volunteers raised flags. Balancing privacy with collaboration is key. We think about how a holistic lens prevents bias, examining wander-off theories alongside foul play, or natural causes versus human intervention. In Gus's story, the lack of outdoor evidence pushed toward internal scrutiny, reminding us to evaluate motives like protecting a younger sibling without vilifying anyone prematurely. To date, the case remains open, with no conclusions drawn. Every evaluation we've shared is personal perspective, shaped by available facts. We respect those involved, recognizing the deep trauma they face amid public eyes. And above everything, our thoughts go to Gus. We hope for his safe return and send prayers for answers that bring peace.